Hello, everyone. This webinar is centered around egg donor anonymity and recipient parents. Whether you are an egg donor or recipient parent, we know that determining the type of egg donation with which you are comfortable is an important and personal decision. Our guests today are here to help you understand the egg donor types, explore the level of communication regarding the relationship between recipient parents and their egg donors, and much more. Our first guest is Erica Almendarez. Erica is a licensed professional counselor and Family Source Consultants Director of Clinical and Match Management. She graduated with a Master of Science degree from Our Lady of the Lake University, where her training focused on brief therapies. Her therapeutic approach is strength-based and compassionate, allowing the client to formulate goals and discover their abilities in counseling. Early in her career, Erica had the opportunity to work with at-risk youth and teens and soon realized a passion for working with teens and their families. Erica's experience has expanded to include infertility counseling and psychological assessments for third-party reproduction. She has assisted her clients with issues in infertility, such as grieving the loss of genetics and decisions to utilize a gestational carrier or egg donor. She chose this career path because she is passionate about assisting families and is thrilled to be a part of the family building process that third-party reproduction offers for individuals and couples here at Family Source Consultants. Our second guest is Samantha Lavy, a licensed marriage and family therapist with JSRC Group of Sanford and Westport, Connecticut. Samantha has a Master of Arts in Marriage and Family Therapy from Fairfield University. She spent the first half of her career working in healthcare, including 19 years in the field of reproductive medicine. Working directly with infertile couples and LGBT growing families, she engaged with numerous fertility programs, surrogacy, and egg donor agencies throughout the tri-state and worked with clients from all over the world. The decision to pursue a career in marriage and family therapy made sense, as the guidance of a relationship therapist is an essential component of the process of fertility struggles. As a daughter, wife, mother, and stepmother, Samantha understands the unique and special roles we play in people's lives. She has a passion for helping clients through strengthening relationships and navigating significant life changes to support happier, more connected lives. She's affiliated with numerous organizations, including Resolve, Men Having Babies, ASRM, and more. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Welcome, Samantha.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
So we're going to jump right in. And Samantha, the first question is to you. What are the actual definitions for an anonymous, semi-anonymous, and open relationship between egg donor and recipient parent?
Sure. So anonymous is really when there is no information shared between the donor and the recipients or intended parents. Nothing at all. The recipient will receive the profile and whatever pictures the donor provides to the agency. That's it. And the donor receives nothing. So she doesn't know who her eggs will go to, whether or not they will get pregnant, if the eggs will be used or not used. She really knows nothing. Semi-open is when there's some passage of information between the parties. So, but it's limited information. So that would mean maybe they sign a contract where they may know each other's name, maybe not. They may or may not be able to meet each other on Zoom, but the donor may still use an anonymous name. Sometimes I'll see they'll make an alias on their Zoom so that there really is no really identifying information. But the most important thing to know about semi-open is that the donor will agree to allow the child or the donor conceived child to contact them when they're 18 years old. And so that is really the benefit or the purpose of being semi-open versus anonymous. And of course, Erica's going to speak to anonymity, so I won't, but that's a whole nother subject. Open donation is when it's completely open. All information is shared. There is a relationship between the donor and the recipients, whether it starts, through an agency or if they know each other, if they're friends or family members.
Great, thank you. A follow-on question, and I'm going to ask you, Samantha, is that a choice that the recipient parents and the egg donors both get to make? You kind of get matched that way. What if I want an open, but maybe the egg donor likes my eggs, but doesn't want an open. How does that work?
Yes. So it usually starts, it starts with both parties, I should say. So when the donors are recruited by Family Source and they're screened, they're asked what are their preferences, and sometimes they don't really know what that means. So Family Source will educate them on exactly what it means, what the benefits are to them. When I screen donors, I always review this with them also, and very few egg donors do not want to be known at all. And of course, that's a whole different subject Erica is going to talk about, because it is a little bit of a red flag if the donor wants absolutely no information being shared, never wants to be found. So when we meet with recipients or intended parents, we'll also ask what their preferences are. And of course, whether they're heterosexual or they're same sex, they do have different preferences, of course, for obvious reasons. And so based on that information, Family Source will then match a donor with the intended parents based on what they want.
Perfect. Thank you. Erica, the next question is to you, and it's kind of going off of what Samantha just answered about whether anonymity is even possible anymore. And can you tell us, when she mentioned that it's a red flag if someone wants to be 100% completely anonymous, not found, what that's about? So it's kind of a two-part question.
Yes, absolutely. And it totally ties in together, because if you have that individual, like Samantha said in their clinic interview, who's like, I don't ever want to be found, I don't want any contact, it's not something that I desire. What I like to bring up at that point, and what ties into the reason why we don't have complete anonymity available to us, is just due to technology. When it was a few years back, I was at the ASRM conference, and this was an actual course that we talked about because of, and I didn't know this, I've mentioned technology is not my strong suit. I didn't realize this, but that there is facial recognition software out there. And I always use this in a clinical interview as the biggest example of why, even if they don't desire any contact, why that's not always 100% possible. If we think about it today, how we can find people and how our technology serves us today, I always tell them what they want to think is, you got to fast forward that 18 years and think about where we're going to be in 18 years, with the DNA, 23andMe and things like that. The donor is definitely going to have to think about whether they ever want to enter into those types of programs, or if their children do. You have to think about, years down the road, where just technology is going to be, and then the actions of all of your family members. So Samantha is correct. That would be a huge red flag, and that if an egg donor does require that, I would then go into things like this. Well, have you thought about, what technology is going to be like in 18 years, and if your children, even if you decide not to enter into a 23andMe type situation, if your children do, your biological children do, there's definitely ways of being tied and getting information that way. So I definitely approach it that way in our clinical interview. We always want to make sure that the donor has all the information and can make an informed decision. And anonymity can be a huge part of that.
I wouldn't have even thought of the 23andMe and 18 years from now, what that could look like, what our next thing is. So that is, I think, crucial information to share with people who potentially are becoming egg donors. And I love that it's in the clinical interview in the beginning. So that is great. Our next question is back to Samantha. How do you know if the egg donor is being honest in their profile?
So I found in my experience with egg donors who are young women, they don't really know what it is we're looking for in an ideal candidate. And I don't want to use the word naive, but they are a little bit naive in the sense that they don't realize that what they're telling us can possibly disqualify them. So in terms of telling the truth, it starts with the profile, and it starts with the initial phone call with the agency, which the mental health people are not usually involved in. But Family Source is great about doing having multiple interviews and doing a lot of checking and checks and balances to make sure that if a donor is rejected, she can't apply again, which they do sometimes with different information if they can kind of figure out why they were rejected. And a lot of the reasons why they're rejected are not necessarily even based on lies, but it has a lot to do with, just the criteria, the ASRM criteria for egg donation. And so by the time it gets to, the clinical interview, Erica and I can both speak to this, that the girls also take a personality assessment inventory where we use that as a tool as well with our interview to see if the girls are being honest or not. But the answer to the question is, really, we can't really verify if they're lying because none of the information is really verified.
And I can understand that you can't ever give 100% guarantee. However, what I'm hearing is there are so many checks and balances that it's unlikely the screening between the mental health professionals and Family Source consultants is so thorough that we feel pretty confident that what we're providing is the best reflection of that potential egg donor. Would you both agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would further say in our clinical interview, we do ask forwards and backwards types questions sometimes too, to like, well, you said your family was supportive. However, you're saying now that you don't have a relationship with your family. So, help me understand that kind of questions.
I like that. So
way.
You really deep dive. You don't just take the one answer and move on. You're really getting to know that egg donor. That is wonderful. So Erica, the next question is for you. What is the standard level of communication between an egg donor and a recipient parent?
Standard, well, as Samantha said initially, with that anonymity, whether there's any information kind of crossed, I would say is the standard. I would say the semi-private anonymity would be sort of standard, at least with FSC, because we do give certain information. We also ask for, if pregnancies had resulted in their donation, and oftentimes donors will know. So I will say that's probably the industry standard. I haven't come across very many open-ended egg donation processes or individuals who enter into those agreements. The known egg donor agreements are a little bit more rare. However, I will say, so, in deciding what level of communication that you want to have or what route you want to go is going to be very important. I will say if it's two individuals, two recipient parents entering in to the agreement with the egg donor, they're going to want to be on the same page as to what they desire for now, presently, and for the future. As we've heard and what we've taught, and as we've talked, we've seen that that's very important. We can't plan for everything, but being informed is always the idea, right? And discussing. And then we talk to the donor during the clinical interview too about what that realistic level of communication can be like and what she desires and what fits into her lifestyle, what she imagines would be great down the road for her future and her future family if need be. So these are all kinds of things we definitely talk about when it comes to what that level of communication would be like.
That's wonderful. So do you run into recipient parents when they first come to Family Source that maybe two of them have different views of their level of communication and you guys have to help work through that?
I personally haven't experienced that very often. It seems they've had multiple conversations by the time they've gotten to signing up with FSC. And the clinics are really good about educating also recipient parents on these types of things. And so they've at least thought about it, and they've at least had the discussions. And I always like to preface it with, for them, you may not have the answer to this, but let's talk about it now. Let's kind of dive into it now. Let's see where you are. And so that kind of leaves them open to, if they haven't started that dialogue, they can start it, with me in the interview, and we can get to some sort of resolution to where they are.
Oh, great. Thank you. The next question, Samantha, for you is, we're going to explore the level of communication regarding the relationship between recipient parents and their egg donors. What kind of communication can they expect in a semi-anonymous, or in rare circumstances, the open relationship?
Yeah, so I think in the initial phase, when they're being introduced to each other through Family Source, it's usually done on a Zoom, which is HIPAA compliant. And that's sometimes they'll meet in person. I've also heard where some egg donors meet with the parents in person, but it's really an art, I think, for the person who's doing the matching and the introducing, to really know each party and to have already had discussions with them and know what it is that they want now and in the future, as Erica said. And so it's our job as the mental health professionals to help both parties really see this relationship through all the way. And then, of course, with the donor conceived child. And we also have to consider whether the donor conceived child is going to have access to the donor. So the communication in the beginning is usually pretty limited. It usually consists of one Zoom meeting. If it's semi-open, or sometimes not even at all. Sometimes it's a letter. Sometimes the donors will say, I received a beautiful letter from my intended parent. It made me so happy. She seems similar to me, or the guys seem similar to me. We have similar views and interests on life, and that made me really happy and fulfilled. And the same. Sometimes the recipients will say, I saw a video of the donor that sufficed. We're happy. We were able to see her speak. She's intelligent. She's very nice and sweet. And so we're happy with that. There's really no one answer. There's so many different ways for the relationship to start. And then if they choose down the road to know each other, which I have seen, I have patients or clients rather who have great relationships with their donors. They're part of their life. They visit, they know the child. Sometimes they spend holidays together. And so it's beautiful to see all the different, the different spectrum of what that relationship can look like.
I love that there's no one level of communication or kind of communication. It's whatever works best for the egg donor recipient parents at the time. So the flexibility to me is what makes it so perfect. All right, we're going to switch back to Erica now. I see this question a lot on social media. It's, how do I approach my child about telling them they were born from an egg donor?
Okay. I kind of go back to the, I work a lot with the gestational carrier parents, intended parents, and I've talked to them about, if they're going to be open about it with family members, if they're going to be open about it with anybody else, then it is very important that they share with the child that this is their birth story, or this is their story. And so along with that, I said, what better way to tell a story than with a book? So I have talked to parents about, starting with age appropriate language and books. I know that the gestational carrier world has books available. I can imagine that there is also egg donor books available to help explain and to help with the story of the child. And so I say, it can be as simple as that, and just starting that conversation with an age appropriate story and book, and just using age appropriate language with the child. thing is parents will become experts on their children. They will know and understand how their children receive information and what works for them. And I think it's one of those things that will happen naturally with the parent. They'll understand what it is that they need to share and what it is that they can't share with their child. But in our world of massive information that we have available to us, I think there's definitely help out there with stories and illustrations and things like that they can share.
I absolutely love that. It's, to me, the best way. However, like you said, they're going to get to know their child and they're going to just naturally figure out the best way to do it. So this question's not in anything I planned for, but I just wanted to ask really quick, for those considering becoming an egg donor, is there anything you'd like to tell them where to start, or kind of just anything else you'd like to add?
I would say be informed. Be informed. Like the things that we've talked about today, I think are those side things that they don't necessarily think of while initially entering into becoming an egg donor. Sometimes, the thought of helping someone and the compensation can be really appealing, and so they might skip over some of the things that we talked about today, or they might not seem as important. But all the more reason why Samantha and I, take our job and position very seriously to continue to educate them and inform them and make sure that they are making the best possible decision for themselves today about donating.
Thank you for that. And Samantha, for you, is there anything you'd like to tell recipient parents looking at considering egg donation?
Yeah, so I think, like Erica said, to be educated, to know what are all the levels of a relationship, what types of relationships can you have with a donor, and knowing yourself and knowing what it is that you feel you're going to need as a parent, what information you feel you're going to need to raise your child, your donor conceived child. And like Erica said, giving the child information when it feels comfortable for you. I think that parents always ask us, when is the right time? When is the right time? And they're very focused on that moment of, is it 3 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old? And I think, Erica said it very well. It's, your own child and what will feel right and when it feels right. And so when thinking in terms of being recipient and choosing an egg donor, it's very important for you to know what it is that you're going to want to tell your child. And sometimes you don't know that. And that's our job, really, to help you think of that and think of those things now.
Perfect. Thank you both so much for helping educate potential egg donors and recipient parents. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you.
Bye.
Our staff and partners have firsthand knowledge of the pros and cons surrounding the different types of egg donation relationships, and we are happy to discuss our personal experiences with you. Visit us at FamilySourceConsultants.com and select the option that best describes you under the egg donation dropdown, becoming an egg donor or egg donation for recipient parents. Thank you for joining us today.